So I was looking at my previous analysis video, which was about Super Tux Kart, and I've noticed that it doesn't feel as passionate as my other or previous analysis videos. It's a good thing I am analyzing a more passionate game this time, am I right? Today we are analyzing a game called Cross Racing Championship.
Hi everyone, as always Patrick here. If you're already subscribed, make sure you turn on notifications, otherwise YouTube won't tell you if I posted anything. If you are new to the channel, make sure you watch until the very end and consider subscribing if you like it.
Okay, Cross Racing Championship. Cross Racing Championship, also known as Cross Racing Championship Extreme and Cross Racing Championship 2005, is a racing game developed by Invictus Games and published by quite a number of publishers. I'm not going to list them all. And the game was released in 2005. If you've seen my analysis videos before, you know what to expect. It's time to start the analysis video by talking about the graphics. There's nothing I can say about the graphics really. I mean, the game looks okay, but honestly I've seen better looking racing games 1 year prior in 2004. To prove my point, let's compare this game to other racing games that also came out in 2005. Extreme Rally Racer / WR Rally, Car Racing, the 2005 version of course, XT Rally, Ultimate Baja Madness, R Factor, and of course World Racing 2. Oh yeah, and who can forget about Need for Speed Most Wanted 2005. Most of those games look way better than Cross Racing Championship, but that doesn't make Cross Racing Championship a bad looking game. It just looks worse than most of the games I've just mentioned. Let's quickly talk about the graphical options that are present in this game. You see, I am playing the Steam release, which fixes issues that are present in the retail version of the game, issues related to widescreen and widescreen support and several graphical bugs. And since this is a fixed release, most of the things got fixed. The game supports widescreen resolutions. You can even run the game in 4K if you really want to. There are a lot of graphical options like anisotropic filtering, anti-aliasing, VSync if you really need it. The game runs at high frame rates. The game doesn't crash, doesn't lag, it didn't stutter. So it's all fine. Like I've said, almost every issue was fixed in the digital release. The keyword is most of them, or mostly, because there is one problem. There's no FOV slider. And I have to ask, you are making a digital release of an old game. You are fixing everything you can. And you didn't think of implementing an FOV slider? Shame on you, Invictus Games. All I'm trying to say is that the Steam release is basically the better release, and I definitely recommend choosing this version over the retail version. I know I didn't talk about the story and the gameplay yet, but don't worry, I'll get to that in a moment. Speaking of which, let's talk about the story. There is no story. There is a career mode, you make progress there, you try to win races, and you try to be the best racer in the game. And I am perfectly okay with this. Why am I perfectly okay with this? Well, I've talked about this in my previous analysis videos, so if you want to know my reasoning for this, just go watch my older analysis videos. I've explained everything about this topic in those videos. Long story short, there is no story, so let's talk about the gameplay. The gameplay in Cross Racing Championship is very good. But why is it very good? Short answer, the gameplay in Cross Racing Championship is very good because of 4 things. Great handling, actual weight, proper suspensions, and fun crash physics. Long answer, I'll just explain those things to you one by one. Let's start with the great handling. Racing games made by Invictus are very well known for having great handling, and Cross Racing Championship is no exception. The reason why the handling in this game is great is because it's grippy, twitchy, the cars stick to the ground, they rarely lift off the road. Most importantly, the cars are heavy, both when driving and in collisions. Those are the most important reasons on why the handling in this game is so great, but there are also other factors to consider. The reason this works is because Cross Racing Championship is a simulator, not an arcade racer. I know there are a lot of people that say that Cross Racing Championship is an arcade racer, and to that I have to say, that's a pretty bold claim. Combine all of those things I talked about just a second ago with the fact that the settings in this game are pretty deep and hardcore. You can tweak all manner of car settings and set up your wheel, pedals, gears, clutch, and handbrake settings to a granular level. That's why I believe that this game is more simulation than arcade, but it isn't held as highly as titles like R Factor, presumably because it was less well promoted back in the day. Actual weight. I have briefly talked about this before, but I am going to talk about this again, because why not? Every car in the game is heavy, which is very fitting for a simulation game. Not much to say here really. Every time you try to turn, and every time you actually turn, the car behaves like it doesn't want to turn, but it actually does turn pretty normally and pretty realistically. Sadly, I can't say more about this. You really need to play the game to understand what I'm trying to say. Proper suspensions. This is without a doubt the best part about the gameplay. If you're watching this, I assume you already know how suspensions work in real life. I mean, you are watching a video about a simulation game, after all. I'm just going to say this. The suspensions in this game work for you instead of working against you. When you're driving up the hill, the suspensions will work for you in a way that they will help you get there, at least partially. The same goes when you're going downhill. It's hard to show this with the footage I'm showing you right now, so you have to play the game yourself to see what I mean. And last but certainly not least, the fun crash physics. When you compare crash physics to other racing games that came out at that time, you will easily be able to see that they are not as well developed compared to other games. However, the crash physics in Cross Racing Championship are still pretty good. The best thing about crashing in Cross Racing Championship is the fact that the crashes are unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen when you will crash. When you hit an object, one of two things will happen. The object will either break or the object will hurt you pretty badly. For example, when you hit a steel barrier, the object will either break or hurt you, but it will leave a mark, and that mark being a huge dent. I love details, small detail like this. When you hit another car, more things can happen, but for now I will only talk about two things. When you hit a car, it will either work for you or against you. For example, sometimes when you hit a car, the opponent's car will flip over and, spin out, and then you'll gain an advantage. But sometimes when you hit an opponent's car, you will spin out and you will lose a lot of time. So you really have to be careful when you're hitting other vehicles. I should also mention that crashing affects your car, but in a bad way. It depends on the crash force, of course, on how fast you were going and stuff like that. But sometimes your car can be damaged pretty badly. So badly that you have to restart a race, or if you're playing on the highest difficulty, you have to retire from the race. Combine all of those things I've just talked about, and what do you get? You get amazing physics that still hold up to this day. What about other stuff like tracks and cars themselves? I don't have too much to say about them, but I have to talk about something, otherwise this analysis video will be incomplete. Let's quickly talk about the tracks. Cross Racing Championship covers pretty much everything when it comes to racing tracks. It's a rally racing crossover title after all. It covers everything from circuit racing, rallycross, traditional rally, and more. The tracks in this game have this design that I like to call the Expand Rally design. AKA there's one big map, there are many different routes that are connected with each other, and because of that you have hundreds, if not thousands, thousands of tracks on one map, which is great for replay value. Now, of course, if you know me, you know that I personally think that the track design in Cross Racing Championship isn't as good as Expand Rally and will never be as good as Expand Rally, but that's a pretty high bar to reach. But I have to say, despite the fact that those tracks aren't as good as they are in Expand Rally and probably other racing games, the tracks in this game are still well designed. Each map, and to an extension each track in this game, has something unique. For example, some maps and some tracks have more long straights, other maps and other tracks have more sharp turns and other curves, etc, etc. But the most important thing is the fact that those tracks are well designed. In fact, some of those tracks are so well made that they make a reappearance in other Invictus games like Project Torque and Level R. What about the cars? There's a wide range of vehicles in the game. The bad cars, the good cars, buggies, and more. Some of those cars look a bit more like conventional rally cars, which I've included in this footage. Every single car and vehicle in the game is different from each other. For example, Chorus behaves differently from something like Chorus AD. Chorus AD behaves differently compared to something like a buggy, etc, etc. You get the point. Every single car can be tweaked and upgraded. When it comes to tweaks, you can tweak something like suspensions, tires, and other stuff. When it comes to upgrade, you can upgrade most things you would expect in a racing game like this. You can upgrade the engine, you can change the tires for other types of surfaces, and other stuff like that. Like I've said before, some of the cars are so great that they make a reappearance in other Invictus games, like Project Torque and Level R. Since I've run out of positive stuff to say, it's time to talk about the bad qualities. Thankfully, there aren't too many of them. Actually, there aren't many of them at all. There are two big bad qualities I have to talk about. Other bad qualities are not as bad as the big ones, or they are just nitpicks. Here's the first big bad quality, the camera. It shakes way too much when you turn. It makes me dizzy and just uncomfortable when driving. I know that this is a simulation game after all, but even in other simulation games the camera doesn't shake that much. And you can't turn the camera shake off in the options, you can't even reduce the effect. So that's a big no-no for me. And the other big bad quality is the difficulty. You see, I was playing the game on intermediate difficulty, and even then I struggled a lot when I was playing this game. Don't get me wrong, I am not saying that the game's difficulty is ridiculous. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is the AI is a little bit too aggressive. I just wish it wasn't that aggressive in some races. I do know that the part of the problem is because of the cars. In some races your opponents have better cars than you, but still. Also, if you are playing the game on any difficulty that's higher than intermediate, you can only use interior cameras, which I hate because of the FOV, and like I've said before, there is no FOV slider. And also, when you play on the highest difficulty, you can't respawn, and when you crash, it's over for you. So the highest difficulty is definitely not recommended for your first playthrough. As for the smaller bad qualities, I don't know, is it really worth talking about them? Okay, I'll talk about one of them. The graphics could have been a bit better. In conclusion, Cross Racing Championship is a fun racing game that is definitely worth your time and money. The game offers decent graphics for the time, no story, but that's not a bad thing, and really fun gameplay, and also addictive. However, I do have to give you my professional advice. Buy the game on Steam because the retail version uses Starforce copy protection, which can destroy your PC. The Steam version doesn't have this issue, and it fixes a lot of problems that are present in the retail version. What else can I say? Go buy the game on Steam and have fun.
But that pretty much sums up everything I wanted to say in this analysis video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Just be